Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I could go up a wee bit more, actually. Yeah. Great. So welcome, everybody. Now, the general rule of this place is it's really difficult to look in both directions through 180 degrees, and there's a huge empty space just here. So if you'd all just like to filter right in, as close as you can get, make me feel comfortable. That's good. Closer, closer, closer. Come on down, all of you. That's brilliant. So let me just start the evening by introducing myself. I am Professor Michael Arthur, and I have the great honour of being the President and Provost of Ucl. And I like to think of this evening as one of the best evenings of the year in what is clearly the best university in the country. So welcome to this evening, because tonight we are celebrating the bursaries and scholarships which are provided to UCL by numerous donors, many of whom have come along to enjoy the evening. So we've got our donors, we've got our recipients, our scholarship recipients, and we've got quite a few of the academic staff that teach those students here in the room. So it's a very important evening because it's about celebrating success, and it's about celebrating everything that UCL is good at and is very proud of. I think we can turn it down a wee bit because I'm getting lots of feedback. That's great. So what we would like to do this evening is to obviously introduce several speakers, but before we do that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background to the scholarships. When we first started this evening, we were discussing it just now, we could have held it in the broom cupboard round the corner there. There weren't so many scholarships. So the first thing I want to say is what a huge number of people we've got in the room, obviously recipients of those scholarships. Welcome to all of you, but very importantly, welcome all the donors who make this possible. And as you've gathered, the number of donors and the amount of money coming into bursaries and scholarships is going up and up with each individual year, which is just fantastic to see. There's been a particular success during this year that I want to highlight for you, and that is that over the course of this year, the government, through HEFGE, offered in an interim period, because they're changing across to postgraduate loan schemes, they offered matching funding for postgraduate scholars from the government. For every £1 that you gave as a donor, we could add £1 from the government. And that led to over £500,000 worth of additional support, and it created 340 new master's scholarships. So a huge thank you from me to all of you that responded to that opportunity. We phoned around, we got in touch with all of our friends, we got in touch with people who didn't realize they were about to become friends, and the response has been absolutely phenomenal. And there are 340 people, therefore, in this institution this year who wouldn't have been able to come without your generosity. So I just wanted to point that out, because that was a huge one-off success. And when the students come, by the way, they don't just come here, they don't just add excellence, they don't just come here to study, they add a huge amount of atmosphere and a huge amount of excellence to things outside their immediate curriculum. So a couple of examples of that. One of our students directed a show which was from the African and Caribbean Society that was called Pan-Afrique, and that was a great success. And then we've had another student who has been working with the British Museum, for example, photographing, transcribing and archiving some historical journal entries relating to Selena Woolley's 1922-1934 excavations at the ancient city of Ur in Mesopotamia. And I've been practicing that all afternoon, that particular sentence. So that's just to give you a flavour of what's going on. We are also trialling tonight, and seeing what you think of it, some of our new branding for our campaign. So philanthropy is absolutely at the heart of UCL, and we are building up to a significant philanthropic campaign, which will launch this summer. We can only get to that position, by the way, through your continued generosity. We've had a successful year. We're now, it's always, I think, a bit crude to mention sums of money at these events, but if I was to tell you that we were the third most successful university in the land at fundraising over the past year, that's a great achievement from Laurie and the team, and from all of you, our donors. So we're second, so there's Oxford and Cambridge, who don't really count in life, and then there's us. So we were next, and very, very importantly, with a team only half the size, we managed to outperform King's College London. So we're very proud of that, and that's encouraged us, and we will be launching a philanthropic campaign. I think we've got some launch events lined up for London, haven't we, for September, and then I go globe-trotting, opening it in America and China and Hong Kong and other places like that, which will be fun. It's also Philanthropy Month this month, so we're celebrating that. And there are so many things I could talk about where philanthropy is important. You'll see lots going on around the campus, lots of works on the estate, most importantly of which the last free site that we have, which is affectionately called the beach site. I have no idea why it's called the beach site, because I can't see a beach anywhere in sight. It's the bit between the theatre, the Bloomsbury Theatre, and the terraced houses, which is the back entrance. In about 2 years from now, that will be a brand new student centre, and it'll have 1,000 places for our students to study and work. So we're very proud of that, and there's some philanthropic support, of course, gone into that. It's about a £62 million development altogether. So another piece of excitement for us. Of course, let me say the blindingly obvious. We've got a great attendance tonight. We could, with your generosity, have even more next year. So please do think about us and continue to give generously to this great cause. So I'm going to finish there, and I'm going to introduce the first of our additional speakers. We've got a combination of students and donors tonight, and our next speaker is going to be Naomi Masumi. I hope I got that almost right, Naomi. So she is a LLM law student 2016. Naomi, over to you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for that flawless pronunciation. It was amazing, spot on. Hello, everyone. My name is Neyman Masumi. I'm a full-time postgraduate law student at UCL. I'm very honored to be here and to talk to you guys today. I actually got out of tutorial like nearly 2 hours ago, so I'll try make these 10 minutes more fun than my day has been. I want to begin by thanking the President and Provost Michael Arthur for hosting this wonderful event. I would also like to thank the Development and Alumni Relations Office for organizing it. The financial aid that I have received gave me the opportunity to fully engage in the LLM program at UCL and not worry about my finances. And this is a particularly wonderful thing for a Persian, because God knows our best feature is spending, and we love materials. And I have to admit that without the Ardalan Family Scholarship, I most definitely would not be here. Throughout my life, I've come to realize that education is the most transcendent gift one can be given. And the Ardalan Family Scholarship has given me that gift, allowing me to have my foot in the door of the future, a future I was once unable to envision, and that was deemed far from reach at a time. 4 years ago, at around this time, I was anxiously waiting in the corridor of Iran's Institute of Technology to hear the result of my startup pitch. All my work and effort kind of boiled down to what happened at that moment. So, see, when I was a child, a highly ambitious woman in Iran were considered something of an anomaly. I learned this by watching my mom struggling along her journey to success. In the 80s, as a young woman who had a vision of achieving her ambitions, my mother found herself working day in, day out, often for 20 hours. At a time, it was a tough thing, but she was determined to prove she could deliver just as well as a man. Her male peers, unfortunately, ridiculed her aspiration to succeed and questioned her intentions. Success for my mom was a very lonely road, with few friends here and there. Yet she never lost sight of her inner knowledge that what she was doing, what she believed in, was a worthy cause and a winnable fight. She decided to take charge of her destiny. Having seen my mother's determination to succeed pay off, I decided to adapt the same mentality. I told myself that I was willing to take a risk, and I didn't care if I lost everything. I didn't want to go through life quietly, safely, tiptoeing my life to an early grave. I thought to myself, what is all this worth if I don't have my integrity and free spirit? Going through college with this mindset was a challenge. But the more daunting the task, the more I was drawn into it. It seems clear to me that innovation was the missing ingredient of law schools. So I decided to break this sort of a legal doctrinal mold and came up with entrepreneurial approach to streamline fragmented oil and gas laws in Iran. I had long held the desire and vision to start a business in energy sector. This spawned many ideas, but nurturing those ideas and turning them into something tangible required knowledge. At the time, I was greeted with skepticism, doubt, and ridicule. I'm sure my friends even thought I was high on drugs at one point, and I wasn't, just a little bit. I went to the state to acquire a firm grounding before returning home to bring my goal into fruition. I had faith that I would succeed, but waiting in the corridor of the Iranian Institute of Technology, I knew that my whole life had boiled down to that moment when I would hear whether I had made it or not. I hadn't. That was when everything started to unravel. I lost my investment in the startup. I was unemployed, and I became financially reliant on my family. I felt as though life had cruelly knocked me down, and it kept me in a state of inertia. Hiding behind my fear, I came up with all type of excuse to validate my inaction. I spent 3 years in the dark place, no longer working towards my dream. I let that single event define me as a failure, simply because I hadn't produced the result I wanted straight away. I couldn't even see success or happiness, or anything that looked remotely like it around me. I railed at a time that great entrepreneurs such as Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg never stopped to warn us about this part of a game, the part where it all goes wrong. And worst of all, I lost my hope. That little thing that holds out its hand to you in the dark was completely gone. It was so hard to rebuild myself piece by piece with no instruction book and no clues as to where all the important bits are supposed to go. But the challenge was to hold on and to learn to believe that the universe reversed tenacity. I had to embrace the faith and believed that one day it would be my turn to succeed. And also, one thing that I learned from the time in my life is that fear isn't real. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to panic over things that don't exist, don't presently exist, and may never exist. Fear is a choice. A year ago, while I was browsing through some pages on law and entrepreneurship, I stumbled upon this program called Law Without Walls, which is run by UCL. I feel like, for some weird reason, the universe was kind of playing emotional game with me because the premise was so interesting and it was replicating all of my dreams. And knowing that even difficult things are only temporarily, I instantly felt that I could do it. I can just apply for it. I did worry that my lack of financial resource might prevent me being admitted, especially since I had no choice of getting financial assistance. But even so, I dared to get my hopes up. Turns out, July 1st of 2015 was my day. The day I got my admission letter from the Ardalan Family Scholarship was the day that hope came back into my life. It was the moment that I thought I can forget everything I've done and can start over. It is actually very humbling and kind of reinvigorating to start over. It takes courage. The only thing that you need to do is basically you put your ego aside, maybe on a shelf, and tell it to be quiet. And for me, it has been. I mean, it screams once in a while, but sometimes, yeah, I maintain it. When I started at UCL, I've come across a few professors who have dared to publish research debunking the claims heavily embedded in legal doctrine. They have allowed me to think that it is okay to go against the grain, to refuse to conform, to take the roads less traveled instead of the well-beaten path, to laugh in the face of adversity, and more importantly, to take a leap of faith without being afraid to fall. Another interesting thing is that when I was little, I used to think when I grow up, I will no longer be vulnerable. But being at UCL, these past few months, I have realized that growing up is to accept vulnerability, none of which would have been possible without Mr. Cyrus Ardalan, whom, dare I say, also stubbornly refused to fit into society. I met him, unfortunately he's not here. I did not email him because I wanted to be a surprise. Note to myself, do not try to surprise important people because it never happens. So, unfortunately he's not here, but I have to say, when I met him back in November, one thing that struck me the most about meeting him was his passion to thrive and do his best. I've come to learn that his path to success was not easy by any account. His family left Iran before the revolution and never had the chance to go back home. They endured the agony of living in exile. Meeting him, I learned that there's no chance, no destiny, no suffering, no faith that can circumvent or hinder the firm resolve of a determined soul. Cyrus's family might have missed out on their dream of living with their loved ones in their homeland. But here's their son. I mean, not here, but so well accomplished in his own right, helping other Iranians like me to follow their dreams. I'm sure there are men like Cyrus standing in this room who have been put in extraordinary situations during their lives, who have suffered immensely. But out of all this suffering, it has emerged the strongest souls and huge characters. They are the ones that are here to let us dream again, and they will be unforgettable. Because what we do for ourselves, sadly, dies with us. But what we do for others and the world remains and is immortal. So, with that said, I would like to introduce, I actually met these lovely people 10 minutes ago, and they made me promise not to butcher their name, so I'm going to do justice. Here we go. I would like to introduce Mr. Richard and Maureen, who are the founders of this trust called the Amar Frances Foster Jenkins Trust. That was horrible. Sorry, I murdered the whole thing. Thank you so much.
Okay. Provost, ladies and gentlemen, when it was suggested that we might like to say a few words this evening, our initial reaction was that we were going to be preaching to the converted. But we've been reliably informed that amongst the guests here, there will be a few of you who have not yet made up your minds to be donors or aren't quite sure about it. So to this group, we have a straightforward piece of advice, which we will then justify with a concise cost-benefit analysis.
Firstly, the advice. Don't wait until you're dead to give it away. There is only one cost, and unusually, this cost itself has benefits. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, money for scholarships and research grants is generally tax deductible at your marginal tax rate. So a grant of £10,000 could only cost you £6,000. But of even greater benefit is the satisfaction of being able to take control over some of your own taxes and direct them towards centres of excellence such as UCL, with the certain knowledge that your money will be wisely spent and properly accounted for, which is more than you can say for a lot of government expenditure. In 2002, we started our trust with one scholarship. Now, at 8 different academic institutions, we annually fund 17 scholarships and research grants, 3 of which are at UCL. A master's scholarship at the Slade for figurative painting, and 2 doctoral research grants, 1 for neuroscience and 1 for structural engineering. Next, the benefits.
Well, the benefits to us of being donors are fourfold. In the course of each year, we get to meet a wide range of highly intelligent, talented, and motivated young people. This in itself is an antidote to aging. We have several scholarships for the performing arts, so we're frequently attending recitals, masterclasses, rehearsals, and performances of opera, ballet, theatre, and this is most enjoyable. The scientists can be somewhat more challenging, but nevertheless, they go to great lengths to explain the nature of their research in reasonably straightforward terms, in the course of which we get to learn a lot. A further benefit, and one that means a great deal to us, and which actually prompted us to establish our trust in the first place, is that we're able to name a scholarship in memory of a departed friend or relative. And not only does this bring much pleasure to the deceased's loved ones, but it also constitutes a lasting memorial.
And finally, we get to the sales pitch. So for a comparatively modest outlay, you can delay the onset of old age, get out of the house more often and be culturally stimulated, preserve the memory of loved ones, as well as being kept up to date with advances in science, technology, and medicine. In fact, we don't consider scholarships and grants to be a cost. We think of them as investments. Unlike a holiday or a new car, the money is never written off, since an investment in someone's further education is not only of benefit to the individual, but to the wider society. What better return on an investment than knowing that you have made a difference, no matter how small, that will contribute to greater knowledge and understanding and the development of artistic and academic excellence. Thank you.
And now it's our pleasure to introduce Janie Gamans, who is the who is studying for a BA in archaeology, and you are the recipient of the Sir Malcolm Grant Scholarship.
Good evening. My name is Janie Gammons. I'm a first-year student studying BA Archaeology here at the Institute of Archaeology, UCL. I'm originally from a small seaside town called Worthing, and today I stand here in front of you as an exceedingly grateful Malcolm Grant Scholar. I'd like to give you my story on how the award of the Malcolm Grant Scholarship affected my life, and how contributions from people like you standing in front of me today can astronomically turn somebody's life around. I'm going to start 5 months ago with potentially the most terrifying and midlife crisis equivalent week of my life, for lack of a better word, the lead up to A-level results week. Though I was one of the many lucky undergraduates standing here in this room to have logged on to UCAS and received an offer from UCL, the prospect of moving to one of the greatest and most diverse cities in the world filled me with incredible apprehension and anxiety. And these questions about how I would afford day-to-day life, affording to be independent, purchasing academic material so that I could have the privilege of accessing it from my own room, being able to pay for fieldwork and field trips like any archaeologist should be able to do, all of these thoughts securely revolving in my head. The New Policy Institute published in 2015 that of 9 million young people aged 14 to 24 in the UK, that approximately 30% of these students are living in poverty. That 30% equates to 2.7 million young students living under the poverty line in the United Kingdom today. Poverty is a cruel and harsh tutor. And as a person who had had first-hand experience, I've known it to discourage those from the poorest of households to apply for university. Although in the last 2 years, the number of students under the poverty line who have applied and attend university has risen by 10%, there is still a fear of attending further education due to financial restrictions and repercussions. And similar to me, these are the students held back by going to university, especially students who wish to apply for university in London, a city ranked by the International Business Times as the 5th most expensive city in the world. So where does my story fit into this, you may ask? Let me rewind my story to 2001. I was 4 years old, and my father had just passed away from cancer. My mother, at this point, had been living in the United Kingdom for 5 years, with my father having moved from Thailand. She moved to Britain with hope in her heart that bringing me up in the country could offer me an abundance of enriching life opportunities and broaden my potentials beyond anything she had the prospect of doing, having lived in a rural and poor province of Thailand. Shortly following the passing of my father, my mother was then dependent on me to teach her basic English, how to read and how to write. Living as a single-parent family brought about great financial difficulty when growing up, and a constant anxiety surrounding money struck from a young age. At age 8 in 2005, my sister, having shortly graduated from university, was diagnosed with schizophrenia and institutionalized. This was a highly disruptive time in my early childhood, colored by great difficulty in having to translate for my mother at regular hospital visits regarding my sister's health at just age 8. However, my family are in a great position now to say that my sister has actually recovered from this and is now a full-time lecturer back at home. But it is during this disruptive period that my mother had luckily met my stepfather, the next closest father figure I had in my life. But at age 12, things had taken another turn for the worse, and he had suffered from a heart attack and fell critically ill. He is now paralyzed from a stroke all along the left-hand side of his body and suffers from a severe speech impediment. Although he evidently remains an important figure in my life, again, this impacted my family massively. Around the same time, my brother, who lives back in Thailand, was diagnosed with AIDS, cancer, and a cardiomyopathy. This news turned my family upside down and was a time where, whilst growing up at age 16 and 17, we all had to find ways of financially supporting my brother from England for his ongoing medical treatment. The collective financial aid that my mother, sister, and myself provide for my brother is an ongoing hardship that has impeded greatly with our lives. These stories of my childhood are the visceral realities of what any given individual can go through in the world. And it was just by chance in this case, it was me. I'm not standing here today to provide you with a heartfelt sob story, or to tell you about my hardship and how deserving I am of my scholarship and all the money that everyone in this room has ever so kindly and generously donated. I'm here because it is your money that has changed lives. Though growing up, my early childhood has been colored by what one can only describe as great misfortune, UCL in particular has offered me a clean break from my past that others may not have the privilege of confessing to. To me, the importance of studying archaeology is what gravitates around my resolute and upbeat attitude. It is the pinnacle of what motivates me to achieve higher and go beyond the standards expected. To some of you, the thought of studying remains deposited in the ground sounds incredibly mundane and boring, to which I agree with you. But it is archaeology and the understanding of what makes us human that motivates me to be standing in front of you all here today. The Institute of Archaeology has provided me a department enriched by the world's most well-known of archaeological scholars. I'm constantly surrounded by key archaeological figures who are benefiting towards new archaeological discoveries, and being here at UCL, and specifically the Institute, is what makes me so incredibly proud. And every student and young adult should have that opportunity to be proud and to achieve. It is now thanks to my first term at UCL and the Institute that I am now a member of staff at Stonehenge, as well as participating in leading archaeological research for the likes of scholars such as Dr. Stephen Shannon, Dr. Andy Bevan, and Dr. Alessio Pomzano. And it is to the donors of the Malcolm Grant Scholarship that I have each and every one of you to thank for. The day I received the Malcolm Grant Scholarship, on the 25th of September 2015, was the day that all fears and apprehensions were eradicated away. I know it sounds quite hyperbolic in that aspect, but to feel liberated, to feel that all those anxieties that spun in my head and once lingered whilst moving to London is something I can't even begin to explain to you. The new liberation brought to me was not only in the sense that I would never have to fear spending money as a student on the most basic academic material, but because of something much greater, my family, to which I'd like to take this minute I have to say to all the donors towards the Malcolm Grant Scholarship who are standing in this room today, and on behalf of all the students standing here, that I owe you my absolute eternal gratitude for what you have done and what you've given, and hopefully what you continue to decide to give. Nothing is more exhilarating than being able to say that I will no longer have to worry financially during my time at university, and that my mother is alleviated of her anxiety, that after years of constant hardship, she will never have to worry about me financially at uni, and she can live her own life. It is with great honor that I had the pleasure myself of thanking you on behalf of many other scholars in this room and bursary recipients. The money you have given can turn lives around. They can allow students to be students in their own right without having to worry about the basic things that they may need and require. They can become the academics, achieve the careers they have long had ambitions over, discover new things because their focus is no longer prioritized around their anxieties, but in fact on what their heart had set out the moment they chose to write their personal statements. Students should be students. They should be resolute in their studies without financial difficulty impeding on what they aim for. And sadly, that is the grotesque truth of what poverty and financial restrictions can do. But it is with the many awardees here today that proves what your donations can do. Provide students who are motivated to be the academics of your future. Write the headlines of your generations to come. To provide the statistics and the turnarounds of 2.7 million young students living under the poverty line and to succumb financial difficulty. Because I know now that it is with the motivation of the scholarship that it is ensured that with hard work and several years to come, that I can work towards becoming the PhD student in archaeology at UCL. And many other students should have that privilege too. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Geraint Rees to the stage, the Dean of the Faculty Life of Science. Thank you.
So, I'm the last speaker standing between you and the drink and conversation that will flow after this. To start with, I think it's worth reflecting on the incredibly eloquent testimony we've had from all of our speakers this evening about the life-changing effect that scholarships and bursaries can have, as well as, of course, the effects on longevity and the tax advantages of those too. So I think I wanted to start by thanking all of you and all of the individuals who have supported the UCL Scholarship and Bursaries Programme. Now, I'm a faculty dean, and I've seen at first hand how quickly the aspiration to start contributing to a scholarship and bursaries programme can turn into reality. So around this time last year, we were thinking about how in life sciences we might be able potentially to open our very competitive postgraduate neuroscience program and our very competitive postgraduate structural biology program. These are PhD programs that attract hundreds of applicants for just a few places. And we had the aspiration to see if we could open those to people from across the world, regardless of their personal background. A year on, thanks to a very generous initial donation of $150,000 from the Vickers Family Trust, we're able to start that Scholarship Without Borders program. An offer was made last week, and we hope that individual will accept our offer, of course, and we hope even more that that individual will be here this time next year, benefiting from that life-changing experience and ability to come to our faculty. So you can not only make a difference, but that difference can happen very quickly. Of course, scholarships and bursaries are just part of a much broader portfolio at UCL in which we're seeking to live up to the aspirations of our founders to allow or deliver a university education to anyone, regardless of their personal circumstances or financial background. And of course, that encompasses not just scholarships and bursaries, but a program that starts, well, actually as early as primary school these days, but also, for example, in our faculty, a graduate student of ours started the Into Science program, which delivers summer internships to several hundred school children from poorer financial backgrounds to help them write their applications and get into science, technology, engineering, and medical degrees at Russell Group universities like ours. So there's a whole portfolio of ways in which we can all make a difference. Now, studying as a student, as you've heard, is getting financially even more difficult. I think the average student at UCL now takes out a loan or has to pay approximately £60,000 over the 3 years of their courses. The government has decided for the poorest 500,000 students that their grants will be converted into loans later in the year. You heard from Provost about the ending of the postgraduate support system, and although that has been led to the opportunity for postgraduates to take out loans, that means that potentially millions of individuals from the poorest financial backgrounds are now having to borrow money to live up to or to benefit from an education that UCL and other universities can preserve. So now more than ever, the donors who support our program and programs like it can make a real life-changing difference to individuals, many of whom are here tonight. So as well as saying thank you, I just want to emphasize how great the demand is. We have 80 donors who very generously support 250 studentships. We think that's amazing, and we're incredibly grateful for that. But it's 3,839 applications that we received last year for financial assistance. It is going up like that. So now more than ever, we can all make a difference by reflecting on what we can do as individuals. And as a faculty dean, I will be working extremely hard with my colleagues to deliver the best education to the best and brightest students that UCL can attract, regardless of their financial circumstance. So I think I have said enough now, other than say I think we should thank again all of our speakers. I encourage you to stay around. There are many student attendees here, as we can see, and I hope everyone will interact, have a glass of wine, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.